try that one. So here's the practice exam. 8x minus 3 squared. So what do we do with that 2 power? Right, 2 of them, huh? And then we multiply it out. Right, so it's first to both, second to both. So I take that 8x to both, and that minus 3 to both. First to both, second to both. So 8x times 8x, 64x squared. 8x times minus 3, minus 24x. He's done. And now the minus 3 is going to go to both. Minus 24x plus 9. Good so far? And now the 2 in the middle can combine, can't they? Minus 24x and minus 24x. Minus 48x. And there we go. Hopefully that answer's there. It's answer B, isn't it? Oh, it's D. You're right. I didn't look close. Thank you. D it is on that one. Are we good there? Questions on that? Want to try number 2? So number 2. 147 x squared y minus 48y. This one says factor. It wants you to factor. You can look at the answers. The answers will help a little bit. So you look down at the multiple choice answers. You can see they're all parentheses, you know, and they have stuff in the front of them. So that'll help you. In fact, yeah, let me show you what I mean by help you. See on number 2, when you look at these answers down here, and you say, oh, wait a minute, look, they all have a 3 or a 3y in the front. I bet there's a 3y in common, right? That'll kind of help you out a little bit. So take out a 3y first. They're kind of giving you a little bit of guidance there. So your first step should be to put a 3y in the front, like that, right? Use your calculator. Find out what those numbers on the inside are. All right, let's see. So 3y times what makes 147x squared y? Use your calculator. It's going to be, isn't it 49x squared? Right, so I just took the 147 and I divided by 3. That's what told me the 49 is what we need. Minus, and what does this have to be back here? 16. Good, boom and a boom, like that. Now, we can do a little bit more. If you look at the multiple choice options, you'll see there's a little bit more we can do. So what do we do now? 2 parentheses. So what multiplies to be 49x squared? What times what makes 49x squared? Remember, we're doing front times front to make front. Remember that kind of factoring? 7x and 7x to make 49x squared. And last times last to make last. 4 times 4 makes 16. How do you make negative 16? 1 positive, 1 negative. There we go. All right, try that one. Again, it says factor. And look at the answers. It's always good to look down at the, well, not always, but in these cases it's helpful. Look down at the answers here. What do you notice they have in the front? 5y. See how a couple of them have 5y? So that's just a good reminder. Oh, yeah, I bet I can take out a 5y. So use that for your advantage. So, yeah, take out a 5y and put the big old parenthesis. Okay, so what goes on the inside? So 5y, so there's going to be 3 things, right, with a minus sign here and a minus sign there. 5y times what makes 5y cubed? Y squared. And 5y times what makes 15y squared? 3y. And 5y times what makes 50y? 10. Good so far. And now we leave that 5y sitting in the front. And then we do the double parentheses for what remains. Remember all this kind of factoring? And we say front times front to make front. What times what makes y squared? Y and y, right? And then what times what in the back makes 10? Yeah, 5 and 2. Now remember how the signs go. Remember what we learned about signs? The sign in the middle goes on the bigger, always on the bigger. Now the smaller can be plus or minus depending on what it takes to make the middle. But the bigger always takes the sign of the middle. Yeah, so which sign goes here, plus or minus? You got to go back to make negative 3. So if you have -5, -5, and what makes -3? Plus 2, right? If you lose $5 and gain back 2, you've lost 3. That makes the middle, doesn't it? So there's our answer. Questions on that one? They have it on answer B. I think it's just the other order. It's the same thing. All right, on to number 4 we go. So x to the 4th minus 256. Factor. As you look back, let's look back here at the answers to help. See the answers? They don't have any GCF in the front, do they? But they have like x squareds and 16s and things. So, let that help you. 256, you know what? You know what would help? Well, you see the 16s in the answers, huh? See those 16s? So you're probably thinking, oh, is it 16 times 16? And it is, isn't it? You just check it on your calculator. 16 times 16 is 256. But well, what do you got to have to make a negative 256? 1 plus, 1 minus, huh? Right? And x squared times x squared makes the x to the 4th. Now, do we stop there? No. What do we do? Do you realize this one will go further, the other one will not? The front one stays just like it is. Do you remember that rule? Remember when you have the plus sign? It's called a sum of squares, right? I called it a double-double, whatever you want to call it. When you have the plus sign in the middle, you can't factor that. When you have two terms, let me just write that. Two terms plus in the middle, it's really called a sum of squares. Whoops, sum of squares. Because it's two terms being added, cannot break down, cannot factor, right? Whereas the minus, that will. The minus will break into x plus 4, x minus 4, and that's our final answer, right? Because positive 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. You might think this x squared plus 16 is plus 4, but it doesn't work. We checked it earlier, remember? It doesn't work. It gives you a middle term of 8x, which isn't really there. Alex?
So, but this answer isn't one, it would end up being another positive 16.
Right, good job, good eye. Yeah, so the real answer is x squared plus 16, x plus 4, x minus 4. But that's not here, so we choose none of the above. That's kind of disturbing, isn't it? So I do not want to surprise you. I really don't want to trick you. So heads up, I will put some none of the aboves on the real exam. That's why I'm putting it on the practice exam and showing you ahead of time so you're not thrown off. You don't get to this and go, oh my goodness, I'm doing everything wrong. No, you're good. Some of them are none of the aboves. I do that just that way I know you're not just guessing your way through the test. You're really solving problems, and I really know that you really understand the material. Does that make sense? So don't be thrown off by that or discouraged. I over the years, my students always say, Mr. Heron, I hate your none of the aboves. I know, but that way I know you're not guessing. So don't be disturbed. There'll be like 3 or 4. You know, there won't be like 10. But there'll be like 3 or 4 answers on the exam we take on Tuesday that'll be none of the above. Good job, Alex. Yeah. Everybody good there? So closely on those. Let's keep going. Number 5, another factor problem. Let's try that one. We're going to factor 15y squared minus 14y minus 8. You can see the answers there. There's no GCF, huh? It's kind of nice. This kind of helps you with the whole GCF thing, right? You can see There's no GCF. Just go right away into the two parentheses, right? Find out what works. Okay, I know these can take time. So the first two, what multiplies to be 15y squared? 5y and 3y. The order on the first two doesn't matter, but the order on the back two will. So you go 3, 5, 5, 3, whatever, doesn't matter. But then when you do the back two, what multiplies to be 8? Yeah, so if I go 4 times 2 is 8, that's not going to work in that order. It turns out it's the other order. But how do we know? Let's just check it out. Remember, we learned to do these by checking. I'm multiplying them out in my head, and I can see that's not going to work. But if you haven't done 10 million of these like I have, then you need to just write it out, and you'll see. So notice no signs yet, no pluses or minuses in the middle. I'm just taking the first one to both and the second one to both. So the first one to both. So that'd be 15y squared, 10y, and then this guy goes to both, right? 12y and 8, we good to there? So the question is, can these two middle ones make that guy? Can a 10 and a 12 somehow make minus 14? No, no way. They can't even begin to do that, can they? So that's not right. So draw a line. Now let's change our, so that was like my first guess. Now let's try 5y, 3y, and now let's switch it. Put the 2 here and the 4 there. Does everybody see that? I just swapped the 2 and the 4. Because, oh, by the way, remember the rule we learned? You're never going to have two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common, but that's okay, right? 2 and 5 have nothing in common. 3 and 4 have nothing in common. That's all good. So let's try it in this order. See if it goes a little better. I think it will. So here we go. The check. You got to check it again. So the first to both, 15y squared. And so this guy goes to both of them, and 20y. And then the 2 goes to both, 6y and 8. Now, can the two middle somehow make the minus 14 that's in the middle? That's what it's all about, right? How can they do it? Sign in the middle. Sign right here always goes on the bigger. Who's bigger, 20 or 6? 20. And so if you lose $20 and you what? Gain 6, you're down 14. Perfect. That's working, huh? See how that worked perfectly? So that's the right order, isn't it? You lose $20, you gain back 6, you lost 14. Sign in the middle goes on the bigger, always, and then the smaller can be plus or minus depending on what it takes to make the middle. Now, how do those, that's great and all, but how do the signs get back into the parentheses? Do you remember that? Crisscross. Did I say that before? So this sign goes right there, and this sign goes right there. That'll always work if you're laying it out in the same order I am. First to both, second to both. They just crisscross. They'll always crisscross. And that's the right answer. Hopefully that's up there. Otherwise, bless you. Oh yeah, they have it, option C. They just have it in the other order, but it's the same thing, right? Isn't that it right there? Yeah, that's it. There it is. We good there? Questions on that one? All right, how about 6? Number 6, factor by grouping. I can make that one a little bigger. Again, notice the answers. No GCFs, right? So we don't have to worry about GCFs. So I'll move 6 a little bigger so you can see it. So number 6. So 8x squared minus 20x minus 6x plus 15. Try that one. What do we do when we have 4 terms? This is first and only. There'll just be one 4-termer on the exam. What do you do when you have 4 terms? They want you to factor. Again, this is all about factor. It's our last factor problem. How do you handle 4 terms? 2 split. Yeah, I would not combine those 2 in the middle. I mean, there's nothing wrong. It'll make it harder, I think. Instead do a 2-2 split, meaning these 2 and those 2. Remember that's how we handled 4 terms? 2-2 split, first two, last two. And so take out what's in common from just those first two, and take out what's in common from just those last two. What's in common to the first two? What goes into 8 and 20? 4, and they both have an x, huh? We good there? That's the GCF for those guys. 4 goes into, 2 goes into them also, but 4 is the greatest number that goes in, the greatest, GCF, greatest common factor. And they also both have an x. So now what goes inside? 4x times what? We'll go back to 8x squared. 2x. And 4x times what? We'll go back to this. Minus 5. Good there. So 2 split. And the parentheses will match. Remember that other part of the 4-termers? So step number 1 is a 2-2 split, and step number 2, the parentheses will match. So look at these back two. What goes into 6 and into 15? 3. So take out, and there's a minus in there, so take out the minus 3. Guess what's going to be in these parentheses? What does it say? Parentheses will match. So what's here? Will be there. Identical. Let's double check it. Is that true? Minus 3 times 2? Yeah, minus 6. Minus 3 times minus 5 plus 15. Beautiful. So when you're doing a 2-2 split, the parentheses will match. That's how you handle a 4-termer. There'll be one of these on Tuesday's exam. 2 terms, 2 terms. 2-2 split. Okay, now we're not done. We have one more step. We can't stop here because this term and this term both have something in common. What do they share in common? Parenthesis 2x minus 5. They both have one, don't they? They both have a parenthesis 2x minus 5. It's just like factoring 4xw minus 3w. You would look, oh, they both got a w. Put it in the front, remove it, bring down the 4x, bring down the minus 3, huh? Because that w could redistribute. It's the same thing. Well, this is like the big W, right? They both have one. Put it in the front, start a new set of parentheses, remove it, bring down the leftovers. 4x minus 3, done. There it is. And so if you look on the answer key, yeah, it's D on that. Okay. So all they say on this one is simplify. So I'm going to jump in with you just to save time. I want to get to the harder ones with you. And this one's pretty hard, though, actually. So these two, what goes into 9? Remember, you do GCF first, right? What's in common? So what goes into 9 and 72? You can use calculators. 9. Yeah, 9, and then you take out the x. They both have one. What does that leave inside? 9x times what? We'll go back to 9x to the 4th. X cubed minus 8. Oh, did I pick a bad one? I think I picked a bad one. Let's keep going. We'll see. The bottom. Take out a 3. X squared minus 4. Yes, I picked a bad one. Oh, I can't believe it. They just really snuck those in on me. All right. Skip this problem. Don't worry about it. You have the answer, right? Whatever it is on your thing. It's not going to be on the exam. This is a cube. It's a triple. I'm not putting that on the test. Unless I do it accidentally, like I keep putting it on everything else. If so, I'll give it to you free. So anyway, so don't worry about that one. Don't worry about number 7 at all. Let's move right along. Nothing to see here. Moving right along. All right, number 8. To number 8 we go. So 16x squared minus 25 over x squared minus 1 all over 4x plus 5 over x minus 1. Okay. First step there. Grab this guy and flip him up. Do you remember that? Dividing is upside down multiplying, or multiplying is upside down dividing. Either way you want to say it. You just grab that guy and flip him up like that. Did we talk about that? Do you remember that? If you take 10 and you divide by 2. Of course, the answer is 5, right? Notice that's the same as half a 10. You see my point in that example? Dividing by a number like 2 is the same thing as multiplying by his upside down, isn't it? Dividing is upside down multiplying, isn't it? So therefore, when they have a big old division problem like this one, you just go, oh, okay. I'm just going to make it 16x squared minus 25 over x squared minus 1 times, and then you do the flip. So that's going to be x minus 1 over 4x plus 5. So there's the flip. Right? We flipped it. Upside down. Dividing is upside down multiplying. That whole big fraction on the bottom of the fraction, you know? Dividing is upside down multiplying. Now, so now we're to here, and now it's become a multiply problem, hasn't it? It's gone from a big old tall division problem to a sideways multiplication problem. So how do you multiply those guys now? How do you simplify that? Factoring, right? Back to factoring. A lot of this test is factoring. So we got to factor. How do we factor 16x squared minus 25? How do you factor two termers? Do you remember? Front times front to make front. What times what makes 16x squared? 4x. And what times what makes 25? 5 and 5. 1 plus 1 minus, because we got to make minus 25. On the bottom, 2 parentheses, x is in the front, 1's in the back. How do you make negative 1? 1 positive, 1 negative. And then bring down the x minus 1 over 4x plus 5. Okay? And now that we've got it all factored, what can we do? Cross cancel, huh? You can cross cancel straight up and down or diagonal. So like these two, and 4x plus 5 is 4x plus 5. So what are we left with? 4x minus 5 over x plus 1. And we're done with that one. Try that one. So now notice we've changed gears. We're not multiplying or dividing. We're adding two fractions. What do you got to do when you add two fractions? Common denominator, right? So when you add fractions, common denominators are required. What do I do to get common denominator on this one? So remember, do we have an equal sign on this problem? No equal sign. So remember in math, we're always keeping the balance. It's either left, right, or top, bottom. Right? How do we know what kind of balance we're keeping? This is top, bottom, because there's no equal sign. If you have an equals, then you have a left and a right, and everything you do is left and right. But if you don't have an equal sign, then it's top, bottom. Whatever you do the top, you do the bottom. So I've got to make those bottoms the same. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 3, huh? Because that'll make this 3x, just like the other one's 3x. Then they'll have the same denominators. What does this 3 do on the top? He distributes to both those. So we get 12x plus 24 plus negative 9x minus 1. And they're both just over 3x now. Does that make sense what happened there? So to add or subtract fractions, you've got to make their denominators the same. And as soon as you do, then you can combine them into one big fraction like that. And now, what does that give us? 12x minus 9x, 3x. 24 minus 1, 23 over 3x. And there it is. Okay, let's go to number 10. Number 10. 9 plus 3 over x over x over 4 plus 1 over 12. All right, so this is a challenging one. This is what we call a complex fraction, fractions over fractions. complex fraction. Fractions over fractions. What do? We got to clean this thing up, make it simpler. What do we do when we have a big old complex fraction like this to clean it up? Do you remember? We have to multiply every term by LCD over 1. Remember, you have to multiply every term by the LCD over 1. Now, the trick is finding the LCD. What is the LCD? It's every, oops, kind of scribbly there. Oh wait, it's not that simple. Yes, it's not. It just isn't easy. I'm trying to make it easier, but it's not. LCD, first off, 4 and 12. Look at the 4 and look at the 12, right? What's the common denominator for 4 and 12? 12, right? Right, they both go into 12. It's not factoring, it's the opposite of factoring, right? It's like if you were adding 1/4 and 1/12. What would be the common denominator? It'd be 12, huh? Right? So don't think, oh, it's 4, that's factoring. We're not factoring now. This is the opposite of factoring. So 12, you take the number, it's the least common number. It's the it's 12. It's the number they both go evenly into. So it's 12, and then you also need the x. Also need the x because it's, so the LCD is 12x because it's under denominator also. So you see how I looked at all the denominators. That's what you do to form the LCD, the least common denominator. You look at all the denominators, all the things that are under bars, and you put them all together in the sense that 4 and 12 go into 12, and then you need the x. So 12x is the LCD. Is that making sense there? So then we take that 12x and we multiply every term by it. So I'm going to come in here and go 12x over 1, 12x over 1, 12x over 1, 12x over 1. You multiply every term by the LCD over 1. All right, so now let's see what we get. So right here, 9 times 12x, what's that? 108x plus. And right here, what happens with 3 over x times 12x over 1? These x's cross-cancel, don't they? 3 times 12 is 36. What happens on the bottom down there? 4 goes into 12 3 times. So you cross-cancel whatever you can cross-cancel. What are you left with down there? (3x squared). Does everybody see that? Plus 12 cancels 12x. Fortunately, there's more. If you look at the answers, let's go back to number 10. You'll see they look pretty simple, huh? You think, oh, there's probably more to do. And then you go, what in the world is there to do? What else is there here? 108 and 36. If you divide them on your calculator, 108 divided by 36, 36 goes in there 3 times perfectly. That's the trick. So you go, oh, I can take out a 36 on the top. And that leaves 3x plus 1. Because 36 times 3x will go back to 108x, and 36 times 1 goes back to 36. So that's the trick. You'll have your calculator during the exam. And now on the bottom, how do I factor 3x squared and x? What goes into both of them? X. They don't both have a 3, but they both have an x, right? And that leaves 3x plus 1 again, doesn't it? See that? To go back to 3x squared plus x. And now what can we do? Cancel, cancel. Look at that. 36 over x. That's one of the answers, isn't it? That's answer D. Seems like it's been a lot of D's, hasn't it? There we go. All right, try that one. So same kind of thing. So it's fractions over fractions, what we call a complex fraction. Fractions over fractions. So you multiply every term by the LCD over 1. So you got to find the LCD first up. And what's the LCD? 1 of every item under a bar, under a little bar. So 1 of every item under a little bar. So you aim right here and you aim right there. There's some items under bars. And we take the highest power. The highest power. We're going to multiply by x squared over 1, x squared over 1, x squared over 1, x squared over 1. All right? So this x cancels one of those, right, to be 3x. This is 4x squared down below here. X squared cancels x squared. And this is 16x squared. We good to there so far? Everybody okay with all that cross canceling? Now we can actually do a little bit more. Unfortunately, again. So we can factor the top. How do you factor this top? If you look back at the answers, you'll see that they're a lot simpler than what we have again. Right? They look kind of simple. So there's more to do. It's a good indicator. So how do we factor the top? 3x plus 4x squared. What do these two have in common? X, take out an x. Leaves 3 plus 4x. Is that good? And the bottom, how do we factor the bottom? Three times 3 to make 9. 4x to make 16x squared. 1 plus, 1 minus. That getting easy for you? That kind of factoring? And then notice cancellation. So it's x over 3 minus 4x. There it is. That's answer A. All right, so how do we solve something like... Now it's an equation. Notice we have an equal sign for the first time. Right? Out of nowhere, an equal sign has appeared. So what are we going to do? How are we going to handle that equal sign? What do we do with an equation? So I gave you a game plan earlier for solving x squared equations. So solving x squared with an equals. First step, get a 0. Second step, try to factor. You know, like with the 2 parentheses. Step 3, or you could use the negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that's the game plan. So anytime you see an x squared equation, that's the game plan. So I'm going to come in here and go, okay. So let's do it. So step 1, get a 0. Got to get a 0 on one side. So how am I going to get a 0 on one side? I'm going to bounce these guys over. Minus 3x plus 1. Remember when things jump over the equal sign, they change signs? Question?
During the test, do we have to...
When things jump to the other side of the equal sign, they change signs. Remember that? So that 3x jumped over, became negative 3x, and that negative 1 jumped over, became positive 1. They switched signs. We good to there? And now we factor. Well, you can try to factor. It's not going to factor. I'm going to go right into the quad. So I'm going to go, all right, this is A, this is B, and this is C. Remember? A is the number, the first number, B is the second number, C is the third number when you do the quad. So it's going to plug into the quad now. Negative B, negative 3. It's going to become positive, isn't it? Everybody see what happened there? There's a negative in the formula, and then B itself is also negative. So we got double negative, huh? Negative 3, negative B.
Is this going to be on YouTube too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the whole thing. So negative B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. So I just plugged everything in there, like we've done before in the homework. Then we just start cranking it out. So we got double negative on that B there, on that 3. That's going to become positive 3 plus or minus square root of 9 minus, what is that, 64? 4 times 16? All over 32. And so that equals what? 3 plus or minus. Subtract those on your calculator. Is it 55? Yeah, minus 55 over 32. Are we good to there so far? Just 9 minus 64 is negative 55. All right, and now what are we supposed to do when we have a negative inside of a root? Do you remember? What do we do with that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Good, Shanae. That negative pops out and puts an I. Remember that negative in a root pops out an I to the front of the root. Exactly. So that'll be 3 plus or minus I root 55 all over 32. And Math Excel, they wrote it, they separated it. And which is fine. You just want to identify it. Here, I'll go back and I'll show you that answer if you're ready for me to go back there. So number 12. So again, what was the answer I had? I just forgot it. What was it? Negative, it was 3. Plus or minus I root 55 over 32? Yes. Yeah, so which one of those is the same as that? Yeah, it's this one, isn't it? Do you see how that's the same? They just broke it into the 2 separate cases. C looks awfully close, but look, it's got that negative right here. That's a no-go. A has a negative there. That's a no-go. D has a negative there. That's a no-go. There's no negative on that 3. So the answer is B there. We good there? Is that making sense? All right, so that's number 12. Okay, now we're getting on to the 13, which is the multi-letter kind. So number 13 has A equals a half H times big B plus little b. Solve for the little b. These are kind of what I ran out of time on earlier. How do you handle the multi-letter ones? So, first thing you're going to need to do, we got a fraction in there, don't we? So step 1, multiply by 2 to get rid of the fraction. 2 on both sides. So multiply both sides by 2. Why? Because we have a 2 in the denominator. Have you seen that pattern? Whenever we have a fraction, whenever we have a denominator, we multiply through by that, clear it out of there. So I'll do that. I'm going to multiply this side by 2 and this side by 2. You good so far? And then what happens? These guys cancel. So we get 2a is little h b plus little b. Good so far? No more fractions? Which is always nicer. And now we can go ahead and distribute through the parentheses. So I'm going to go boom, boom, and get h big B plus h little b, like that. So first step, I got rid of the fractions. Second step, I multiplied through the parentheses. And now the little b is saying, right, because we're trying to solve for little b, right? The little b is over here, and here he is right there. You got to focus on him. Little b saying, I want to be alone. I want to be alone. Get rid of this stuff that's with me, the h and the big B and the other h. Get rid of all this stuff so I can be alone on my side of the wall. So what are we going to do next? To get him alone. Going to subtract the h big B from both sides, right? That whole chunk that's added, we subtract. Well, we always do the opposite, right? So something's added, we subtract. Something's multiplied, we divide. So that whole h big B chunk is added, so we subtract it. And so then we get 2a minus h big B is h little b. Last step to get the little b alone. Divide through by the little h. And that cancels out. And little b is alone. And there, if you look on the multiple choice, it's option A. There. And yeah, it'll be multiple choice on the real test, just like this one. So yeah, we don't have to worry about uppercase, lowercase, or anything. It's just multiple choice option A on that. Is that making sense?